Anubis, also known as Anpu, the ancient Egyptian god of funerary practices and care for the dead, is represented by a jackal or a figure of a man with a jackal's head. During the early dynastic period and the Old Kingdom, he had a preeminent position as Lord of the Dead, but he was later eclipsed by Osiris. His role is expressed through sentences such as, "the man in the mountain," i.e. the cemetery, "the lord of the sacred land, the first of the Westerners," and "the man in the embalming place." His special interests concerned funerary worship and the care of the dead. This is why he is famous as the inventor of mummification, an art he first used on the body of Osiris. In his later role as guide of souls, he was sometimes identified in the Greco-Roman world with the Greek Hermes in the composite god Anubis. In the unfathomable darkness of hell, where the sun never reaches and where time seems to have stopped. The face of a jackal. God holds in his hands the fate of the mortal soul. He is Anubis, the Lord of the Dead. The first to embalm, the guardian of the beyond, of eternity, is threatened when the souls appear before him, their past lives manifested under the weight of a heart placed on a divine scale, with a dark and resolute gesture. Anubis placed the heart on one side and on the other a feather, the mating feather, the goddess of truth and justice silently settled, and the fate of each person, the soul decides in the balance. A feather is harder than a feather means a life lived with justice, opens the doors of Arun, fields, reeds, and eternal paradise, but if the heart heavier, it will awaken the dread hammock, the devourer of souls. Anubis in his role as guardian, stands between souls and monsters, allowing only corrupted hearts to be ferocious by monsters. In this realm of darkness and mystery, the god exercises his great power, guiding the dead and bringing comfort to the fearful with his righteous and compassionate presence. But how did a god come to play like that? Acts as an intermediary between life and death. What is the story of the jackal-headed god? Who is so enchanting and terrifying? The answer lies in the dawn of time, where gods walked among humans and legends mixed with history. A journey into the abyss of ancient Egypt will reveal the origin of Anubis. A story that begins at the sacred court marked by forbidden love and shocking betrayal. The story covers this in vast antiquity. When the gods of ancient Egypt still walked among their mortal subjects. From the majestic figure of Anubis, ruler of death and embalming, come the sacred scrolls of the cleric of Heliopolis, which tell a fascinating story of his birth. Originates from a series of seductions and tricks. Nephite, goddess of night and morning, was married to Seth, god of storms, desert chaos, and war, but she longed for the love of her brother Osiris, god of the underworld and rebirth. And enemies. On the other hand, Osiris is the god of the underworld and rebirth. Husband of Isis, goddess of magic and motherhood, and sister of Nephite, in his desire he disguised himself as Isis to seduce the judge of the dead at nightfall. The goddess beautiful under her disguise deceived Osiris, and from this union, a child was born. This child was Anubis, a being destined to walk the line between life and death. Between order and chaos, as the goddess gave birth to the child she feared from Seth's wrath. So she left the child in the desert to hide her deception, but the Lord's wife found the little child and adopted him as her own, and the god grew up to become a god with the head of a jackal and the body man. A figure who symbolizes death and protects the dead on their journey to the afterlife. Despite being raised by Isis, he never forgets his true lineage, and his fate is always tied to associated with death and resurrection. As time passed, the desert sands whispered secrets, and one of those secrets reached Seth's ears. That day he discovered the blatant betrayal of his deputy and brother Osiris. From infidelity he gave birth to Anubis, who was always ready to rage in a storm, burning with rage and jealousy, but cunning and vengeful, he hid his anger under layers of brotherhood mask. He invites his brother to a party in his honor, a party filled with laughter, wine, and joy, but this happiness is only a facade to hide the darkness of betrayal. In the party reveals a beautiful wooden chest inlaid with jewels. He announced a promising game, that whoever fits in the trunk would keep it. One by one the guests tried their luck, but no one adapted perfectly. Finally, Osiris confidently and carefree entered the chest, then revealed his true face, and with a cruel laugh he sealed the chest with the judge of the dead inside. With the help of his followers, he threw the chest into the Nile, where it was swept away by the turbulent waters, sending Osiris to death. Once his revenge was complete, he ascended the throne of Egypt, leaving Isis and Anubis in the dark, but the gods would not stand idly by such brutality, even though his vengeance was effective and set off a chain of events that would shape the destiny of the Egyptian gods and people. Isis, the great sorceress, and goddess of love and motherhood, was saddened by the disappearance of her god-husband. But sadness did not dampen her spirit but aroused within her the fire of determination. The goddess, determined to find and save her beloved, began a journey that took her throughout the land of Egypt and to Dash. With her sister Nephti, she walked along the banks of the Nile searching for any trace of the chest containing Osiris. Their search was long and full of pitfalls, but their love and determination were stronger than any obstacle, and their search eventually brought them to the city of Byblos, in distant Phoenicia. There they discovered that the chest had become entangled in the roots of the tamarisk tree. This tree has grown into a magnificent and sturdy tree. King Byblos was impressed by the beauty of the tree, took him down and used him as one of the pillars of his palace. Isis, disguised as an old woman, approached the palace and gained the trust of Queen Byblos. When she finally reached the pillar containing her beloved, she burst into tears, her tears revealing her true divine identity, and with the help of Queen Byblos, she retrieved the chest and freed her. Osiris's body, but her journey was not over yet. The powerful goddess brought the god's body back to Egypt in the hope of bringing him back to life. However, Set's eyes remained wary and his vengeance was not yet complete. The throne of Egypt and the power and prestige that came with it were sweet to Set, god of storms, deserts, and chaos. He was not content simply to be the king's brother. He yearned to claim the crown for himself, and this ambition clouded his judgment and drove his evil. Out of his greed, he hatched a sinister plan. While Isis and Anubis were away, he found the hideout where they kept Osiris's body. In a final act of contempt, Seth took his brother's body and chopped it into 14 pieces to ensure that God could never rise again and reclaim his throne. His brother's body parts were scattered across Egypt, each piece thrown in a different place. Corner of the kingdom, from the driest deserts to the deepest rivers, Seth had achieved his goal. He had eliminated his brother and secured his place on the throne. However, he underestimated the love of Isis for Osiris and the courage of the son Anubis his deception brought to the world. Despite Seth's terrible actions, Isis and Anubis would not give up. They will embark on a mission to find and reunite the god of death's body parts. In an effort to restore him to life and return him to the Egyptian throne, this would be their final act of defiance against Set, the sign of their steadfast resistance against his tyranny, desperate but determined. The goddess undertook the task of finding and putting together the pieces of Osiris's body. In her suffering, she found comfort and help in Anubis, the dark son of her husband's union with the Nephite. Despite his complicated origin, God showed indomitable respect and devotion for his father and joined Isis in her mission. They scoured the burning deserts, explored the deepest rivers, climbed the highest mountains, and entered the darkest valleys of Egypt, searching for the scattered parts of Osiris's body. Each piece they found was a step closer to the possibility of a resurrection, a hope that kept them steadfast in the face of pain and despair. Finally, after an arduous search, they managed to reunite all the parts except one. The phallus of Osiris, according to the legends, was consumed by a Nile fish and could not be recovered. However, Isis, the great sorceress, used her powers to create a replica, thus completing the body of the divinity. Then came the moment of the most sacred and crucial task, to bring the dead body back to life. Anubis took the initiative and demonstrated his purpose as the Lord of Death and Mummification. In a sacred ritual, he invented the embalming process, carefully cleansing the body, removing the internal organs, and treating them with spices and resins for preservation. She then wrapped the body in white linen, preparing it for its journey to the afterlife. With the body prepared, Isis used her great magic to breathe the breath of life into Osiris. Although she could not keep him in the world of the living, she managed to revive him long enough to conceive a son, Horus, who would later challenge Set. After this, the judge of the dead retired to the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, where he became the lord of the dead and the judge of souls. Anubis, his faithful son, would assume his role as the guardian of the underworld, the guide of souls, and the protector of the dead. Thus honoring his father and fulfilling his destiny, with Osiris residing in the Duat underworld and Horus the newborn, engaged in the struggle for the throne of Egypt against Set. Anubis took his magna place as the guardian of the underworld in the underworld of Duat, where the dead undertake their final journey. There are many threats and dangers. Among these dangers none is more feared than Ammit, the devourer of souls, a frightening creature composed of the deadliest parts of Egypt's largest predators. The head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus, Ammit, with his insatiable appetite, always waited on the side of the scales during the judgment of souls. His menacing presence was a constant reminder of what was at stake: eternal life or total annihilation. Anubis, the impartial judge of the dead, had a vital role in this judgment. After the body of the deceased was embalmed and the funeral ceremonies were performed, the deceased soul was led by Anubis before the scales. There the heart of the deceased, which contained all his actions and desires in life, was weighed against the feather of the mat, the symbol of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, it was a sign that the soul had lived a righteous life and could enter the field of reeds and eternal paradise. However, if the heart was heavier, it was given to Emma to be devoured, ending the soul's existence. The Lord of the Dead not only oversaw this process but also protected the souls of Ammit, if he saw that the judgment was just and the heart was lighter than the feather. He would intervene to protect the soul from the ravenous Ammit. In this way, the god fulfilled his role as protector and guide, ensuring that the souls deserving of paradise was not consumed by the dreaded devourer of souls. This task of the guardian of the underworld, though grim, was of vital importance in Egyptian mythology, reinforcing the concept of mat, order and justice in life and death. Anubis, with his seriousness and justice, ensured that the order of the universe was maintained, even in the final judgment of souls. The Lord of the underworld also provided comfort on the dreaded road to death. The Egyptians knew they were not alone. The mighty god, with his beacon of justice and protection, guided the souls on their journey, protecting them from the dreaded devourer of souls. The figure of Anubis stands unperturbed through the centuries. His legacy endures in the monuments, hieroglyphs, and stories of ancient Egypt. His story from his birth to his reign in the underworld is a testament to the richness and depth of Egyptian mythology, and to the central role he played in shaping one of the greatest civilizations in history. Even now, thousands of years later, the divinity remains a potent symbol of judgment, protection, and guidance in the afterlife. an enduring echo and the eternal guardian of the underworld. I am the eternal guardian of the underworld of the ancient culture that revered him as the I and the eternal guardian of the underworld.